Welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Alex Wolf here, and I'm joined by a very special guest today. I've got Tony East of the Locked On Pacers podcast to talk to on today's show. We're going to talk about who else? Obi Toppin, who is now in Indiana and going to be making his debut this year. So we'll talk about expectations for the former Knick, if he could be starting, things of that nature. We talk about the floor and ceiling for the Pacers. Are they going to be a threat to the Knicks this year? Well, that's an intriguing question that we're going to look into. And of course, the Jalen Brunson versus Tyrese Haliburton debate, and why maybe it shouldn't be as much of a debate. Maybe it should just be okay to say that they're both really good players. So that's all coming up next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. I want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us a part of your daily routine. Make sure you hit that notification bell on YouTube or the auto download function on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode and you can become an everydayer. And if you want to keep the conversation going with Gavin and I, you can check us out on Subtext. It's a cool new platform that lets you talk with us right from text messages in your phone. How could it be easier than that? Check out the title or check out the episode description for more details. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief at Knicks site The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. And as I said, I'm joined by Tony East today of the Locked On Pacers podcast. Longtime rival of the Knicks, all the way from back in like the 90s and early 2000s, but less so. Well, I guess in recent years, 2012, 13 as well, is still pretty raw. If you're like me, and that was still a crushing defeat, but not as much of a rival in recent years. Maybe that could change this year if the Pacers make the progress that they hope to. So let's not hold it up any further. Let's get into it with Tony. All right, I am joined by Tony East of the Locked On Pacers podcast. And Tony, how you feeling, man? We're almost there. The offseason struggle is almost over, and we almost find ourselves in the thick of things again.
It's October. The trades are flying. And something I think we could talk about today, if Szczerbiak and Haliburton and Brunson have their way, Hicks versus Knicks might be back. What a time for us to be talking.
Yeah, I don't know how much Szczerbiak's going to be on TV as much this year. I feel like he's going to be more in the studio again. So, which actually, that's where he gets off those spicy takes. But there's all this talk that the Knicks might be trying to hire like Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson, like now that ESPN let them go. But we'll see how that all goes. But yeah, I think, there's a real possibility, especially with all the ties that bind these teams together, both historical and current, that we might have a little bit of a revival of this rivalry this year. I think first off is Obi Toppin. It was a pretty weird end to Obi's tenure with the Knicks, if I do say so. He and Emmanuel Quickley obviously drafted in the same draft class and have had very different fates with how their Knicks tenures are going and or ended. Quickley seems to be a pretty big part of the team now. We'll see if the Knicks put their money where their mouth is as far as giving him an extension in the next couple weeks before the regular season starts. But I think smart money is that they probably are. And meanwhile, they sort of unceremoniously sent Obi Toppin to Indiana this offseason and didn't almost for free. Let's be real. It was just for like a handful of whatever second round picks. What's the feeling like, before training camp here, as far as what Obi's role might be on this team? I feel like there's probably, I think you and I talked about this earlier in the summer, but I feel like there's a decent chance he ends up starting to start the year, right?
We did our mock Obi trade and had like pick 32 in there. We were not close. The way it's been described as Locked On Pacers is pocket lint was the package for Obi Toppin. Feel free to keep that one in network and keep using it, because 2 future seconds that are worst of seconds are not going to be good picks. That's perfect for the Pacers. Like, they drafted Jarris Walker, so getting another forward, of course, is a little awkward in terms of how many minutes they can distribute for 2 former lottery picks at the 4. But if you get Toppin for that, you got to do it. And I get why the Knicks did it, right? I didn't know about this audio of him and Tibbs until after the trade. I also didn't know that because of their unlikely bonuses, they needed to clear like the smallest amount of money to get DiVincenzo or something and stay under the tax. So I get why they did it, but Pacers definitely benefit. I think he'll fit well with their identity. And the reason I predicted he's going to start is I think he'll fit really well with Tyrese Haliburton and not be so strong without him. And because Haliburton's obviously going to start, I think Obi will start. I think it'll be him and Turner in the front court. I get why they would go with Walker. I would go with Walker, in fact, if I were running the Pacers, but I think Toppin will be the starter. They can really explore what they have with him, right? Because obviously, as Knicks fans know, that when he played a lot, it tended to go pretty well. His numbers as a starter were crazy, which obviously is unsustainable. At least I think so. But the Pacers need to figure out what they have because it's a contract year for him, right? So they need to figure out how good he can be and how well he fits with their best players. I think that's another part of their motivation. So I think he's going to get a lot more chances to do pick and rolls and get the ball playing with Haliburton and fly in the open floor. But all the questions about his shooting, his defense, all that will be important for the Pacers. But he'll definitely get a lot more opportunity here than he did in New York.
Yeah, I gotta say, objectively, from a Knicks fan perspective, like I'm excited to see what he does because I really liked Obi Toppin. I thought he was a really good dude. Seems to have a really good head on his shoulders, like, and definitely just kind of was a victim of circumstance here. I mean, he was kind of drafted to be he was drafted with the intention of being the starting power forward, and then Julius Randle had the season that he did in 2020 to 21, kind of out of nowhere. Like I think the Knicks were banking on, okay, Julius is going to be the same he was last year. We'll trade him for whatever we could trade him for by midseason that year. And then, of course, he turns in that All-NBA season, becomes crucial to what they're doing as a team. And, the rest is history. Another All-NBA season this past year, seems to really be playing his best ball. It's just like there was never going to be a path for Obi to play more because of the fact that Tibbs also was completely unwilling to ever not have his rebounding and rim protection out there, which you just don't really have with Julius and Obi. That said, I feel like he's on a roster now in Indy that's going to be perfect. I mean, to your point, Haliburton and him in pick and roll is going to be pretty nasty. Like it's going to be, he's great at diving in the hoop. He's great, off of lobs, obviously. He's pretty good off the short roll passing. So if he gets in there and then the defense adjusts to him, he can kick it to the corner. He can, find someone that's cutting into the hoop. He's got all kinds of skills that way. And I really think having a guy like Miles Turner that often finds himself in the corner, like waiting for that, corner three opportunity to spot up. I think there's a chance this could be pretty potent, like with what they're cooking there, because it's going to be a fast-paced team, I feel like, and I think that he's going to really benefit from the fact that Tyrese Haliburton is always going to be getting the ball with his head up, looking to air that ball out to Obi in transition as well. I think it's going to be a really fun team to watch.
You saw the Team USA hit heads Haliburton does all the time, right? You were there for the Brunson experience, obviously,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's what he does. And not even Toppin, like Bruce Brown is going to be awesome in that setting. And that's what the Pacers are really leaning into. I'll be curious about that Turner dynamic, right? Because I forget what the number was. Someone told it to me recently, but Toppin ran like less than 20 pick and rolls with the Knicks last season. Not like in April, not like in a long, like a short stretch, like the whole year. And I think he would do more with the Pacers, but part of the Pacers being decent to good last year was like Miles Turner got really good at mixing in the pops and the rolls and being a good pick and roll threat. So like, yeah, it's good to experiment with Obi and have him do those things. He should do it way more. But if it detracts from Turner or forces him to be more resigned to the perimeter where he wasn't as effective playing next to Sabonis, I'll be curious how that relationship works out. I don't think they're going to like get in each other's way or anything. I'll just be curious how they share those reps, but they do look like, especially on offense, a pretty good fit together.
Yeah, well, I look forward to seeing how that all works out. But I think that in the grand scheme of things, I'm also curious to see if you think that the Pacers are going to maybe kind of evolve into a threat for the Knicks this year. And the Knicks obviously had a unexpectedly good season last year. I think they were better than most people thought they were going to be, and then made the second round, all this good stuff. Hopefully they improve this year. And yet the East seems to be just chock full of teams that have either gotten way better by trade or logically should develop into a better team as this year goes on. So I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on that. All right, I'll be right back in with Tony in just a second, seeing how good he really thinks the Pacers can be this year, which is an interesting discussion because they're a team that could potentially shake things up in the playoff bracket this year if things all break right for them. But first, I got to remind you all, today's show is brought to you by Birddogs. And I tell you what, guys, out of all the products we've ever been sponsored by on this podcast, Birddogs might be one of my favorites. It's as a guy who runs hot, who generally is sweaty and also likes to stay active. these have been a godsend for me. Birddogs shorts, Birddogs pants. I just recently started wearing the Birddogs joggers on some of the cooler days as we start heading into fall here. But they're just so freaking comfortable and easily the best pants and shorts that I have ever owned. I want to have a full wardrobe full of them at some point. And Birddogs, they're great because not only are they comfortable, but they make you look good, which is a rarity. I have my favorite worn in gym shorts and whatever, but they're not necessarily the most aesthetically pleasing things. I have some nice khaki shorts, but they're not exactly the most comfortable. Birddogs lets you do both. They are made of stretch khaki. They're designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and give you a truly sculpted look. And they also use four-way stretch, which if you never had four-way stretch pants before, I don't know what you're doing with your life. It is revolutionary. It's exactly what it sounds like. It lets your pants fabric stretch every direction so that no matter which way you're going, your pants go with you. And Birddogs just nail that to a T. They want me to show you wearing my Birddogs on camera. I'm not going to do that. I'm too self-conscious for that. I'm sorry, but just take my word for it. My butt looks good and my pants fit great. And if I'm ever somewhere and a basketball game breaks out and I'm in my Birddogs shorts, I don't have to feel weird about just slapping on some athletic sneakers and getting right into it. So if you want to get some for yourself, go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA or enter promo code LockedOnNBA at checkout for a free Birddogs water bottle with your order. That's right. You don't just get cool pants. You also get a big old water bottle so you can stay hydrated as well. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Birddogs off. We promise you that. All right, and we're back in to continue talking about the Pacers and their relation to the Knicks this year. A little Hicks versus Knicks. What do you think's gonna? Let me just put it this way: what is your realistic expectation for the Pacers, and then what do you kind of think is like their ceiling and their floor this year? Actually, I don't know if the floor one is right. I mean, I would imagine the floor has to be probably where they ended up like last year. Right? Like if they're in the lottery again, is that considered sort of like the floor at this point?
Yeah, late lotto would be the floor. I every year do a thing running through the schedule game by game, and I know that sounds stupid, but then you can like see the hard stretches and see the back-to-backs where like sometimes an easy game is harder than normal or vice versa. Doing that got me 39 wins. Now, granted, 2 games are not on the schedule because of the in-season tournament. They'll be scheduled in December. That's super confusing. But so I suppose if they win one of those 2 games, 40 is my number. That's 5 wins better than last year, right? I think they're a better team. They got Obi, they got Bruce Brown. Their ceiling, though, I think there are more ways that they go over their projected win total than slide under, just because they're going to be playing a lot of young guys, right? So like naturally, there's a lot of ways that you can have internal development in that way. Between Haliburton, Nesmith, Toppin, Walker, Nembhard, Mathurin, maybe their backup center too. Like 7 of their 10 rotation players could have less than 4 years of experience in the NBA, right? Like they're still a young team despite being pretty good and having expectations of at least taking a step forward from last year where they were, right in the thick of the playoff hunt. They were limited on April 2nd, right? So they had 7 days left in their season. So despite losing their last games until George Hill scored 1 million points against the Knicks in the final day of the season, they were right in it. So easily a little bit of internal improvement, and the additions make me think, yeah, they could get into the play-in mix for sure, and their ceiling could be in that 45 to 48 range if everything goes right, because they have an all-star. They could have, more better-fitting young talent around them. But at the same time, young players don't always just grow immediately, or talent doesn't always gel right away, or maybe Buddy Hield taking a lesser role or not even being on the team at some point does hurt them significantly. He pairs well with Haliburton, is an awesome shooter. So I think there's more ways they are better than expectation than ways they are below expectation, which maybe that's just because I'm around the team all the time and it's harder for me to see the downsides. But I still think they're, a 1-star team that needs some other talent to be a real threat. And so I kind of have them in that 8 to 10 range in the low 40s in wins, I think, realistically this year.
Yeah, how do you feel about things in the division? I mean, I feel like the Central Division, as far as East divisions this year, I mean, the Atlantic is always really hard. I mean, as a Knicks fan, like it's going to be rough again this year. Like even with all the upheaval and drama, like the Sixers are still going to be nasty because they have Embiid. The Celtics obviously just got probably a decent amount better by getting Drew Holiday. The Nets, I mean, they're going to just be like scrappy and annoying all year with all their guys that just like play defense and stuff. And then the Raptors, like always, from a Knicks perspective, always kind of crush them. Like, but the Central Division really just, it got really, really good. I feel like this offseason. Obviously, the Bucks at the top are like the class of it, and maybe the class of the East at this point with Dame now. But like the Pistons should just continue getting better. And I think that they did well for themselves, like at least like with drafting and stuff. This offseason, getting Oscar Thompson, like I thought he looked really good in summer league, so he might have more of an immediate impact than people think. Cade Cunningham, if he stays healthy, like I don't know, I think there's a really good chance that they're going to look really good. And then you've got like the Bulls. Okay, maybe not the Bulls, but the Cavs got better. I had to throw the little bullshit in there. But
can we get the Knicks and Pacers in the Southeast Division? Can we just all scoot down there?
Southeast? No, well, maybe
the Wizard. No, they don't belong there geographically, but playing the Wizards and Hornets and Magic a bunch every year would be nice.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be nice. As a
Magic
Knicks fan,
should be good this year.
As a Knicks fan that lives in New Jersey, though, I do appreciate that I have 3 arenas I can go see them at reasonably.
That is nice.
So I don't know. Either way,
nice.
But yeah, how are you feeling? I mean, like I think the Cavs did a good job of just kind of building out depth this offseason. Like getting Strus was pretty big, I think, and like they should be a better team than they were last year. So that's potentially like the Bucks and Cavs, I think for sure locks for like top 5-6 seeds no matter what. And then potentially some teams that are going to be in that play-in mix too. Like, how do you feel about the in-division rivalry going on there with everybody?
Yeah, they can't beat the Bucks, and I don't mean that to say the Bucks because they're so good. It's that they cannot stop Giannis at all. They have beaten the Bucks with Giannis once since 2018, and they hit 23 threes in that game. Like it just takes a freakish performance for the Pacers to beat the Bucks. They just can't do it. They won one of their time against the Bucks since 2018. Giannis didn't play. It was the day after his first child was born. And now they have Dame, who's tough to guard, and they have some options for him, but I think they're going to be better. So that's probably 4 losses for the Pacers, right? Like even at their best offensive peak, it's so tough for them to have a guy for Giannis and then also Chris Middleton. Like those types of players, like if we talk about the Knicks specifically, Randall kind of fits in this group, just like powerful big forwards. They just haven't had anybody for it since Thad Young was on the Pacers. Now it was 5-6 years ago now. So they'll struggle with Milwaukee. They struggled with Cleveland last year. They also have some of those more powerful guys. They're not really perimeter players, but they're still good. And the Cavs are just an awesome regular season team. Like I think their net rating was 3rd in the league last year. They lost the Pistons twice last year. That team should be better. Cade's awesome. So there's just like teams that are tough. Like even the bad teams are tough. And then there's the Bulls. Yeah, the Pacers won the Bulls series 3-1 last year. It did take a Herculean effort from Haliburton in one of those games, but they're just not threatening. And they're getting older, and it's not fun to watch the Bulls anymore. But either way, they're not like a joke. Like DeRozan's good, Levine's good. They're not easy. So they'll probably have a losing record in the division, and that's hard for the Pacers because they play these teams every year, and they have the same problems with them. And it's hard to address those problems. Every team wants that big wing stopper, of course, but playing these teams all the time and will continue. I mean, it seems like if Giannis loves playing with Dame, like these are going to be their opponents for years. So got to start figuring out solutions at some point, but it's going to be tough.
Yeah. I feel you. I mean, I feel the same way in the Atlantic. Like it's going to be, yeah. I mean, I was just saying it to Gavin on a show that we recorded that I guess would have come out yesterday. We recorded it the same day for, a little peek behind the curtain, but we were talking about the Drew trade. And I just feel like the Knicks, good or bad, now I think officially have more pressure on them to make a move sooner than later. Like I'm kind of curious if that probably won't hit the Pacers this year, but I feel like the East in general is getting so good now that it's kind of reaching the point where like this apex where if you want to compete now, you're going to have to make a move sooner than later. And the Knicks, I think, are going to run into this situation this year where if they play well and are competing with these really good teams, then they're going to say to themselves, well, why don't we like make that final move to turn ourselves into an actual contender? And if they don't play well, then they're going to say, well, now we're skidding backwards and we need to compete to keep up. And we need to, finally make this big move that we've been thinking about making for a while and, get this done no matter who it's for. Now, like, I mean, I was talking to Evan from Locked On Cavs last week, and he seems to think that like there's a Donovan Mitchell saga kind of. I won't put words in his mouth to say that he thinks it's like right around the corner, but he brought it up to me before the show of like, let's talk about Donovan Mitchell because I think that he might request a trade to the Knicks in the next like year, or like by this time next offseason or whatever, whenever his contract is getting ready to expire. And that might end up sort of helping the Pacers out a little bit if that guy gets taken out of the division. But it's just, I think in general, the Eastern Conference is just so competitive now all of a sudden. And it's just happened over the course of like 2 years where all of a sudden this has gone from what for like 20 years was like the B conference, like other than when LeBron was, with Miami, obviously, which elevated them to a different tier. And then obviously the Bucks won it a couple years ago because Giannis just went like supernova, but it used to sort of just be assumed that whoever won the East was lining up to go lose to whoever won the West for so long. And now it sort of feels almost the opposite. Like it almost feels like the tide is turning. Other than the one or two super high level teams in the West, it feels like the tide is turning where the East now is the deeper, tougher, way more competitive conference at this point.
I don't remember when I tweeted this. Actually, I do. It was before the Wizards blew up their everything. But like, you could make an argument that outside of Washington, every team in the East wants to be better than last year. Every single one, right? Charlotte certainly does. Detroit certainly does. Those two teams aren't necessarily great, but all the rest of the teams are like within striking distance of the play-in or playoffs and want to be better, or think they can be given their stuff and given what they did this summer. Washington maybe zigging while everybody's zagging is a smart decision because of that. But before they blew it up and did the pool stuff and traded Beal, like there was a second I was like, man, is every team in the East going to want to be good or make the postseason next year? Like it is tough both because of that and because all these teams are better. And it's weird that all the teams are on the same timeline, but because there's no juggernaut Warriors or LeBron's Cavs are just so good, like everybody's got to feel like they're an injury away from the conference finals or some young player popping away from, being much better than last year. Like I could probably name 7 teams who think that, so it's going to be a tough time in the East because I don't think you're going to see outside of Washington, teams not really going for it until like late March, which last year, a lot of teams kind of dipped out a little earlier than that. So it's going to be tough. Toughest the East has been since I can't even the late 90s, probably early 2000s.
Probably mid to late 90s, I would have to say. Yeah. I mean, it was that was kind of the golden era where it was.
True. Probably right after MJ got too easy for me to say that, but early 2000s was still cool and good, I think.
Yeah, it was still pretty good. Well, we've talked about the Obi Toppin situation. We talked about the Pacers and in general, just a great conversation about the East right there. I think we've reached the point where we've got to talk about the big topic that everybody loves to talk about on Twitter all the time and getting arguments about, which is Jalen Brunson and Tyrese Haliburton. But I'll take it in a slightly different direction. All right, I'll be right back in with Tony to get into, the Jalen Brunson and Tyrese Haliburton debate. It's like the whole thing. It dominated Team USA this summer. Everybody loves to get into it on Twitter between Indy fans and Knicks fans, especially because Haliburton got a little more in the way of accolades last year. But yeah, it's a fun discussion, and I think you'll enjoy it, especially the fact that we ultimately come to the conclusion of they're both just really, really good players. But first, I got to remind you all that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. So snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. And if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. May I suggest in the more department, the same game parlays, one of my favorites. You can go into a single game and place a multi-leg bet just off what's going to happen in that game and potentially win big. I always call them my uncut gems bets. So if you've never seen that movie, first check that movie out. And then secondly, place a bet like that. It's a lot of fun. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, we're back in. And as promised, I want to talk Brunson versus Haliburton, but not in the sense of just like who's better. Like, because God forbid I have to talk about any more of these top 100 lists or whatever this year that rank these guys and where they put them, and if it was fair and all this other crap. Here's something I'm curious about, because I think I want to honestly just think about this live on air, because I haven't put the most thought into this yet, and I'm going to kind of put you on the spot too. But going into training camp, what is like the number one thing you want to see Tyrese Haliburton get better at this year that could elevate him into a different class of player?
Well, I have two. First of all, I will throw my Brunson Haliburton thing in. Of the dumbest thing ever was these Team USA chats about who should be starting.
Oh
because the reason Haliburton was coming off the bench was because the bench was good with him in it. Like, why? That was fine. That didn't make any sense to me. That was dumb. Okay, the thing that Haliburton, I think, would be his next step, and he's only 23, which is crazy. Actually, he's born on a leap day, so it's his 6th birthday this season, which is crazy to think about. So for him, it's gonna be like, honestly, being more selfish. I know that sounds crazy, because his thing is being this lights out passer, right? Top 2 in assists per game this season, over 10 a game. Shoots it so well from deep, though. And he doesn't get to the line a lot. I think that would be skill number 2. But the thing that it just jumps out to me, this is so like not natural for him, right? So I'm not even sure if he'll ever be this guy, because he can get better in a lot of ways. But last year, 24.7% of his twos were assisted, right? So less than 1/4 of his made 2-point shots were set up by someone else. 44.7% of his threes were assisted. So less than half of his threes came from somebody else, right? So a lot of his buckets, he's creating himself. And his true shooting percentage is still crazy good, 62.4%. So like, him just trying to find his own shot is good offense for the Pacers. And that is so counterintuitive, because he's such a good passer. Him getting everybody else involved is part of what makes him so brilliant. What makes the Pacers hard to guard, right? You never know what he's going to do with the ball. But it's such a counterintuitive element to say that a good passer needs to be more selfish. But I think that is the next step for Haliburton. It's not even like a big jump. Just take his shot attempts from 15 to 16.5. And I think he's thought of much more highly, because his scoring average would go up so much. So that's what I think his next step is. Obviously defensively, he could stand to grow there, but just a little bit more like, I'm that dude as a scorer, and he would look a lot better, I think.
You know what? It's so funny. I think that this is going to come together beautifully, because I think that my request of Jalen Brunson is almost the opposite.
Ooh.
I think that, and I'm not implying that he's a selfish player, because I think that he does a really good job of ball moving and stuff. But I do think, and this is going to come down to design by whether it's Tibbs or another coach down the line. Like, there's going to have to be a commitment at the coaching level to just calling less ISOs. But I would love this year if he ran more like pick and rolls. And, like you referenced that stat with Obi Toppin. And I mean, that's not entirely on Brunson, because he didn't play a ton with Obi Toppin, because they, it's starter bench, and Tibbs is Tibbs. So they didn't get a ton of minutes together because of, one's in one unit and one's in the other. But like, this is a team that doesn't run a lot of pick and roll. And they have some guys that can do really well with it. I think that Julius Randle would do really well from getting some time off every once in a while to just sort of be a pick and pop man from time to time. And Brunson would probably appreciate having an easy possession where he could just kind of run and pick and roll, and then, kick it out to Julius Randle for an open 3. I think they could also stand to do a lot more with Mitchell Robinson, as far as letting him dive to the hoop and throwing him more lobs. I mean, that was like, the guy got the nickname Lobinson, early in his career, because that was just like one of the most money plays that the Knicks had when he was younger, was just throw it anywhere near the hoop and this guy could find a way to dunk it. So I kind of think that's one of the biggest things I want to see out of Brunson. And again, it's going to come down to Tibbs being willing to call more plays. But even with like Josh Hart now going to be the backup 4, from what it seems like, putting him in positions where he can set screens and Brunson can kick it to him, and then he can work out of the short roll kind of thing. It'll save Brunson's legs more, so that he'll be fresher later in games if he can run more plays like that early on and not have to dictate the entire offense. And I think that would work really, really well for him. So it's really funny to me. Like, our thoughts are like almost exactly opposite. Like I would just love for Brunson. I would love for him to hit like 8 assists per game this year. Like, I think that would be sick. And I think that just will require.
Okay. But
yes.
Playoff Brunson, like, was the only dude who could score at all.
Absolutely. And he should still keep doing that.
Yeah.
But I think that if the Knicks start, and this is really more just like a overall Knicks commentary than just a Brunson commentary, but if they start fostering a better environment where guys aren't just basically ISOing to get points and have like some pet sets to go to and various little things you can call on at different points in a playoff game, for example, I think they could be in a lot better shape because I just think we saw in the playoffs last year that they became extremely reliant on Jalen Brunson to score like 35 points per game late in the playoff run, especially against the Heat. And nobody can make 3-pointers. It seemed like everybody was almost like unprepared for kickouts in a way. Like nobody seemed like they had a clue what to do if Brunson wasn't able to get inside and, or create a step back three or whatever. It was tough. I think those are the things that they're going to have to work on to, as a team, get better. But then Brunson, as the point guard, I feel like it might just require a little more of sort of Steve Nashing it a bit and just kind of calling his own stuff, or like being like Peyton Manning out there. You know what I mean? For a little Indy reference, just kind of calling his own plays, calling his own shots, and setting things up for his teammates that way. I think that would be what I'd like to see out of him. Maybe just to go a little off Tibbs' script from time to time, because I think he's essentially Tibbs proof at this point and can just do whatever the heck he wants. So
you're hoping for the Darius Garland stat line: 16.4 shots per game, 7.8 assists per game, basically, right?
I would dig that. Yeah. During the regular season, then still have that ability to score whenever you want during the postseason. Yeah.
Garland's really underrated as an aside commentary. Yeah, I think that's funny that they both the thing is, this sounds impossible. Like, I want Haliburton to be more selfish without sacrificing his assist numbers, aka give him the effing ball.
Yeah.
Just let him do it. Like he's so smart and he sees the game so well, and everybody saw it with Team USA this summer. Just like the way that he makes guys move and see stuff and unnecessarily jumps and spins on like routine passes. It makes an offense go. And so it is interesting that they kind of opposite, at least regular season goals. But the difference is, for me at least, like I just threw in, like Brunson had this killer playoff stretch, right? The Knicks are like, yeah, let's just send everybody in the paint to slow him down. So you have that in your head of like, oh, Jalen Brunson was so good in the playoffs that a whole team was swarming this guy. Haliburton's never played in the playoffs, right? So I have no idea what that's going to look like, or how teams are going to load up or not load up on him, or what that's going to look like for the Pacers. And I think this could be the year, at least a meaningful game if it's a play-in, but there's just no way to know what that should be for him or what that means for the Pacers, is how he looks in those settings.
Well, and I guess we'll see. And if he is able to get there, I mean, I certainly think your advice would work out pretty well if he is able to call his own number more and more efficiently, or not efficiently, but more effectively, I guess I should say, and be looking to set the table for himself more so than others. That is very helpful in the playoffs, as can be attested by Jalen Brunson.
We didn't answer the question of who's better. My answer would be that it doesn't matter. They're very different players.
They are, yeah. I think the answers that we just gave just illustrate they're very different players. I think they're both very talented. I know that Nick's Twitter and whatever loves to try to be like, Haliburton's a bum and Brunson's better and blah, blah, blah. The answer is they're both really good, and they're both at different points in their careers too, and different teams with very different aspirations and stuff like that. So we'll see how it all goes this year, but they're both phenomenal.
I know they're buds, so I kind of doubt it'll ever be like a
contentious rivalry.
Yeah, like contentious rivalry, but it has been manufactured like perfectly in theory, right? Where like they play the same position, they're really similar talent levels. Like fans of both teams have made it a thing. The Team USA start bench thing made it a thing. Wally made it a thing. Hallie got hurt against the Knicks last year, and that wasn't anything the Knicks did, to be clear. It just happened to be the opponent. They were playing. Like, it is all kind of set up to be something, even though I kind of don't think it'll ever be something.
Yeah, I guess we'll just have to see how it all plays out this year, right? Maybe Hicks versus Knicks is back, or maybe we're still a couple years away.
Toppin will be the igniter, baby. Let's see.
Maybe. Once he dunks it and stares down Tibbs, that's it. It's curtains. But at any rate, Tony, thanks for coming on, dude. I appreciate this. The Pacers intrigued me a lot this year. I'm really interested to see what they're going to do. And of course, anyone listening that wants to hear more about the Pacers can check out Locked On Pacers, which Tony hosts, and hear more about just them. But this is probably for most fans of Locked On Knicks as much Pacers as they want for this year. So until next time. But anyway, Tony, thanks so much for coming on, dude, and hopefully talk to you again soon.
Yes, of course. Can't wait.